5. So if I rewrite the equation, we know S is 180. We know L is 7. We know W is 5. So again, I'm just looking at that formula a little above. We know W here is also 5. We do not know what H is. It does not tell us what H is. So if we plug all those in to where they go, then we're just simplifying. 4 times 7 times 5 is 140. And then we just got to solve this. So subtract 140 from both sides. I get 40 plus 10H. And divide both sides by 10. Oh, it's an equal sign. Whoops. So H is 4. Yeah, I'll do the one correction. So here again, you're plugging these in. So you have the area is 88 times 1/2. We don't know what this H is. Capital B is 10 plus lowercase b, which is 1. So now I can add what's inside the parentheses, which is 11. Before I do anything, I don't want to deal with that fraction though. So how can I get rid of the fraction? Multiply by 2. So that makes that cancel out. 2 times 88 is 176. So I have 11H over here, and then just divide by 11. So H is 16. Because that's one term right there, as in they're all being multiplied. So that's like 3x. If I just had that, I just multiply it by once. That all counts as one thing. Yeah, we better do this one too. So here you got to deal with pi. Circumference equals 2 pi r. It tells us the circumference is 37.7, and you have 2 pi. It says to use 3.14 for pi. So I'm going to just change pi to 3.14. So how could I get r by itself? Yes, so you can. We could multiply this out and change this to 6.28, but just for, I'm going to do it this way just because in a couple problems this is going to come useful. I could divide this by 2.2 pi, which is 2 times 3.14, and divide both sides by that. Okay, and that would make them both cancel out, and I get r equals whatever that is. And you can do that in your calculator a couple different ways. You could figure out what the bottom says by doing 2 times 3.14, so that's 6.28, and then come back and do, okay, 37.7 divided by 6.28. Or since those are both, 37.7 is being divided by 2 and 3.14. So you could do 37.7 divided by 2, and then divide it by 3.14. Okay. So you can divide it by each of those one at a time. So what do I get? 6. My radius is 6. Talk about this one again. All right, so what I did here was pi, first of all, is 3.14. So I substitute that into pi. Instead of, you can't multiply these together and make this 6.28. As in, you could do 37.7 equals 6.28 r. And then divide by 6.28, which is probably the easier way to think about it. But here in a minute, we're going to use this thought process of instead of just multiplying these together, I could just divide by both of these. I'll show you that in just a second, and problem later on.
Did you multiply that to one bottom before you divided it?
You can, okay, so you can multiply that and then do 37.7 divided by 6.28, or you can just do 37.7 divided by 2, and then it's being divided by 3.14 also. So you can actually just divide it twice. Yeah.
Now, when you do get an answer that has numbers on the other side, would you plug it in as the easy two numbers on the opposite side of the decimal point, or just leave it as the?
The problem said, let's say, it's necessary around one decimal place. So inside the problem, it should tell you what to do. I think every problem should tell you what to do inside another sign. So there again, you're plugging in. There again, you're plugging in. All right, so here's the idea that I was talking about that I wanted you to think about when you can when you have multiple things being multiplied, that you can divide by multiple things at once. So here you have 6 times g times h. What we're trying to do, we're solve for h, so that means get the h by itself. So I want to get rid of the 6 and the g. So what I can do is just divide by 6 and g all at one time, just like we did a second ago. That's why I did that weird way. And now h is by itself. You have f divided by 6g. And that would be my answer on these problems. All we're trying to do is get the h by itself. So get rid of the 6 and the g. This thought process of getting a variable by itself, and again, this is all this is solving equations, but we don't have numbers. We're using letters instead of numbers. And this thought process will come in very handy for us on the next test. All right, so like to solve for z, what do I have to do here? Divide by the p and the s. So my answer is b over ps. All right, here is the idea that we're going to do a bunch next chapter, which next chapter is graphing. So if you remember y equals mx plus b, that's what this problem is. To get the y by itself, how do I get the y by itself? I need to move this 9x, get rid of the 9x. That leaves the y by itself, so I have negative 9x, positive 5, so I write plus 5. And that's my answer. Probably do both of these. Well, there's 15 problems. There's more things. Okay. Let's do that one. All right, so on this one, I can't even read all those variables. 6 pi z x plus 7 pi z squared. So this one I want to solve for x. I got to get the x by itself. So my x is right here. So the first thing I want to do is what? I can't combine them though because these aren't exactly the same. So since the x is in this term, I want to get rid of this term. Okay. So if I subtract that from both sides, I have b minus 7 pi z squared equals 6 pi zx. So now I have this term by itself that has the x in it. So these are all being multiplied. So how do I get the x all by itself? We have to divide by all three of those, 6 pi and z. So these all cancel out, and that leaves me x equals b minus 7 pi z squared over 6 pi z. The point of this, behind this is, well, one, if we have the volume of something, we can figure out what x is. The volume of z, we just plug it in and work it instead of have to solve an equation. The real point of this is that you can logically think through. If I gave you a bunch of numbers in here instead of letters, y'all can do it just like that. Okay? But the thought processes and the steps are all the same. My x is right here, so the first thing to do is get rid of all the other terms. And then my x is right here, so I need to get rid of everything in this term by dividing. So that same thought process that you've been using to solve for X forever, you're trying to use with all these letters. All right, so how do you find the area of a rectangle? Length times width, so it's just 13 times 7. How do you find the perimeter? Add up all the sides, so 13 plus 7 plus 13 plus 7. Ooh, I had another one of these. This is converting to Celsius. So to convert to Celsius is this formula right here. So they give you Fahrenheit, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it in to the F, so 15 minus 32. We have what, 5/9? 15 minus 32 would be negative 17. I don't think there's one of these. If there is, I'll give you the formula. I wouldn't expect you to memorize the formula, no. So here, this is like negative 17 over 1. So what's happening here is just like we were doing a minute ago. You could do 5 times negative 17 divided by 9. Probably the easiest way to do that. I don't know what that is. That is going to be a decimal, isn't it? 5 times negative 17 is negative 85 divided by 9. So I'm going to do that. It'd be negative. Oh, that's time. Sorry. Used to do that in my other class. Negative 85 divided by 9 is what? Negative 9.4. Is it? Okay. And that one again says round to the nearest 10. So. How do you find? Oh, that one's a little bit tougher. The volume of this cube, remember how to find the volume of a rectangle cube? It's length times width times height. So you do the volume is 3 times 9 times 5, which is 135. All right, so that's the volume of the entire cube, but it says a fish requires 1.5 cubic feet of water per fish to maintain a healthy environment. So find the maximum number of fish you can fit inside this. So the volume is 135. If each fish takes up 1.5 cubic feet, how could we figure out our answer here? The entire amount of volume we have is 135. Each fish is going to take up 1.5. So if we divide that by 1.5, it'll tell us how many fish we could have in there. What's the answer to this one? Anybody do it? 90. And what's the last problem? Look back. How long would it take a person to drive 134 miles on a highway if she merges on at 8 p.m. and drives nonstop with the cruise control set at 40 miles per hour? What would you do to those numbers right there? It'd be 134 divided by 40. 3 point what? 2.25. 2.25 hours. Here's the formula for that, is actually distance equals rate times time. So our distance is 134, our rate is 40. We don't know what the time is, so you divide by 40. I think we'll talk more about that on Monday. Have to use that distance equals rate times time. All right, so these problem solving ones are a bit of a pain. That's why I just went in there and started doing problems to show you how to do most of them. I know that there were a lot of sections covered today, but there's 5.